Good evening, and thank you very much for coming. I was a little worried that spring would not have arrived by the time we were doing this event, but I have to say that on the way I did see beautiful cherry blossoms, which I think is a very good omen. And I say this because a couple weeks ago I was actually in Washington, D.C. at the National Cherry Blossom Festival, and the arborist had forecasted that the blossoms would be blooming on a certain day, and of course they didn't. And on the contrary, it snowed. So they had to postpone the festival. So I hope today that I might be able to sort of transport you to Japan and share the expansive world of green tea, and of course the beautiful artistry of Wagashi. We have Ms. Tomoko Yagi-san, who's made these exquisite Wagashi that you'll be enjoying later today. And of course, the cherry blossoms, which are very inherent in the Japanese culture. So let me start with a couple of slides. So today, again, we'll be doing a little bit of matcha. We'll be doing a matcha demonstration, tea demonstration, and enjoying some wagashi later today. And of course, the beautiful cherry blossoms. And this is really a symbolic flower in Japan. It's the national flower, and it really represents the fragility and the beauty of life and renewal. So the whole theme today will be a lot about sakura. So in Japan, there's the hanami, which is the cherry blossom viewing, and usually you enjoy a cup of green tea as you enjoy the exquisite beauty of the flowers, which are really blooming for a very short life, and of course enjoying the nature's finest tea leaf, which is sencha, and admiring the beauty and, of course, the renewal and the arrival of spring. And, of course, the beautiful green tea plantations of Japan. I have to say I've seen a number of plantations worldwide, and, of course, Japan, they're so beautifully manicured. I mean, when you consider how small the island is, they really have to utilize every inch, and it is just such a beautiful sight. So I had to kind of share this. And from the tea plantations comes varieties of green tea. So we'll be touching on a number of teas. I'll be going over the traditional ones, either some of the classic ones. And we'll be sampling today after the stage presentation a sencha, a genmai, which is green tea with roasted rice. We'll be having a matcha, and also a special to commemorate this special event. We have created a limited edition Sakura Matsuri, which is a spring festival blend. So we'll be sampling that. It was hand-blended here in Brooklyn, where is our corporate office is, and we will also have it available. If you enjoy it, we'll also be having it available for purchase. So that is our Sakura Matsuri. So you can see we are all embracing spring. And again, the wagashi, which in Japanese is translated as Japan, and kashi means sweets. And it really evolved. It really is an art form. And I don't know if those of you have been to Japan, but they are just exquisite. They really evoke nature, and they are just visually so beautiful, handmade. And quite interesting enough, there's a lot about gluten-free, and most of the wagashis are gluten-free. And I give a lot of green tea presentations over time, but I started getting a little bit sort of bored, and I thought, wagashi is really always enjoyed with tea. It's not something that is served as a dessert. It's not something you would have with milk or something. So I started doing little presentations with green tea and wagashi, and this is how Yagi-san, we sort of connected and decided to sort of collaborate. Because truly, when you have a cup of green tea, it's always with a lovely wagashi. And this one actually is a sakura mochi, and it has the leaf for the sakura. So to talk a little about tea and its history, the first legend of tea, actually, was from China, and it was Emperor Shennong, who actually was sort of walking in his garden, and he had a cup of hot water, and a little tea leaf fluttered in his little cup, and it was his first introduction to what he thought was, actually, this is quite delicious. So that was sort of the legend where tea started from China. And of course, it came to Japan after, and I'll share a little video. And the Japanese really did created their own way of tea. So it's interesting how it's sort of transported. And tea, of course, today is actually the most consumed beverage after water. And I always say two things, because a lot of people would often say, well, I know green tea is good for you, but it is so bitter. And I say, well, how are you preparing it? And they say, well, I pour boiling water on the tea leaf. And I say, well, that's first, never put boiling water. Green tea is a very fragile leaf because it is steam and unoxidized. So you need to think of the water temperature. So that is one tip that I always tell everybody. And the other thing that makes Japanese teas quite unique is the Japanese tea ceremony, which is the matcha. And of course, I'm sure many have heard matcha has evolved into this very trend-forward tea here in the United States and in New York. But traditionally, the Japanese tea, the matcha and the tea ceremony, you don't really see in the other cultures. So that is something we'll be able to share in a video. But without further ado, let me show you a little history. And I love this video. Every time I see it, I sort of get transported how tea came to be introduced to Japan.
In the dim recesses of antiquity. From China, tea spread to Japan, India, Sri Lanka, and many other countries, and the culture of tea bloomed in many places. In Japan, entirely unfermented green tea became popular. India and England prefer fermented black tea, and China is known for semi-fermented oolong tea. These are the world's 3 major tea varieties. Tea first reached Japan in the 9th century. Saicho and other Buddhist monks who went to China to study Buddhism brought tea home with them. It was the 12th century before tea became popular, when the Zen monk Eisai brought tea seeds back to Japan from China, and cultivation began in various regions of Japan. After Eisai wrote his famous Kisa Yojoki, the use of tea to preserve health became more common. Sen no Rikyu and other tea masters created the culture of the Cha no Yu, the tea ceremony. This is the highest expression of the culture of tea in Japan. The entrance to a tea house is called the Nijiri-guchi. This entrance makes it necessary to lower one's head, creating a properly dignified spirit for entering a tea house. The tea used in the tea ceremony is matcha. This is green tea that is being ground into a fine powder. With the arrival of tea leaves from China, different methods of preparation and drinking developed, and the popularity of tea began to grow in Japan. This illustration depicts a common style of tea consumption in early Japan, when a cup of tea was sold on the street for a single coin. Green tea became popular among the common folk and is today the most popular variety of tea.
So you can see the chashitsu, which is the Japanese tea room. And I did want to point out, though, that a lot of people have brought to my attention who have done tea ceremony, that actually the gentleman who was doing the matcha is making koicha. So traditionally when you do matcha, there's the usucha, which is called thin tea, and there's koicha. So he was actually doing koicha, which actually was a lot more matcha in there and less water, so it makes it a little bit more of a thicker matcha. And that's usually generally done at a more formal tea ceremony. But part of the whole tea ceremony, which really I think embodies so much of the spirit of Japan, it really takes into account everything from the seasons. So when you enter the room, you'll have a beautiful scroll that may have a haiku, a poem, a flower arrangement. The teaware also, there are seasonal teawares. There's like a tea bowl that may be more of a winter, often black and deeper. A summer tea bowl, chawan, might be a little bit more open. And then you saw the movement, the ritual. Every little, the grace and beauty is really something, and I have told this story a number of times, but I was first introduced, my mother's Japanese, and we were at a Japanese restaurant, I think it was about 17 years old, and I opened the top of my miso soup. So I took the top off, and I was a little clumsy. She looked over at me in Japanese, said, "Ma, tetsuki no warui koto." So she said, "You have to go do ocha." So I went, I was 17 years old, and I can't say I mastered it, but it really did sort of, I was quite taken by the grace, the movement, and when you ask somebody, how long does it take to learn chanoyu, they will say it's a lifetime. So I am still admiring it. I can't say that I am quite good, but having been with Itoen, just all things that embody, I think, the spirit of tea has been really, really special and close to me. I had the great opportunity, of course, meeting Itoen, and when we talk about tea coming to Japan, Itoen is actually one of the global leaders in green tea. We do loose leaf tea, tea bags, matcha, and ironically, we were the first innovators of a more modern green tea, and I don't know if many of you have had oyocha, but we were the innovators of an unsweetened green tea. And actually, it was said it was quite impossible to do this because it would oxidize. But our founding chairman had said, you know, we need to create something that's a little bit more mobile, because the younger generation was starting to drink the coffees and the sodas, and you know, they had their Walkman on the go. So it was great. And I have to say a cute story, because years ago I was at the Shizuoka Tea Festival, and there was a princess from the royal family, and she apparently gave a speech and said, you know, I go around to the schools and I really like to teach the children how to make a traditional cup of sencha, and I told the kids to, you know, bring in their kyusu and their teacups from their home, and she said, well, you know, they came and half of the kids didn't have them at the homes. So she taught them how to brew tea and so forth, and then the little kids said, boton no hoga oishii. Basically they're saying, the bottles taste better. So it kind of, I have to say, we revolutionized tea drinking. So it really is a full range. But I will show you Japan in terms of the growing prefectures. There, you know, Japan is an archipelago of 4 islands. There's Hokkaido, there's Honshu, Shikoku, and then there's Kyushu. And out of the 47 prefectures, 22 areas do grow tea. And Shizuoka, which Toan's from, is 40% production. Kagoshima, which is the southern part, is about 20%. And Miyake, 15%. And then there are other smaller prefectures that produce the green tea. So people say, well, green tea, is it like the different varietals of, let's say, wines? And I say, no. the one difference with tea, which is a 101, is that all tea is made from one plant, the Camellia sinensis, and it's strictly based on how it is processed. So you have the green tea, which is unoxidized, and that is about mostly Japan. Oolong tea, China, is more semi-oxidized, and the black teas are fully oxidized. So this is really, really the differentiating factor, I think, when we deal with Japanese teas, because they are steamed and unoxidized, so they're much more fragile. So I always say it's almost like a fresh vegetable. You know, treat it gently, and again, the water temperature is crucial. It is, a black tea can handle hot water. It's a lot more heartier in a sense. But a green tea, really, really, to enjoy the taste, the infusion, the aroma and all that, it's really about the water temperature. So we'll later be showing you and demonstrating how to brew the various different teas. And again, the processing green teas. So in Japan, you saw those beautiful tea plantations where the teas hand-plucked, or today they have these very, very sophisticated machines that actually do as well as the hand-plucking of teas. So you have the raw leaves, and it's really important. In Japan, they steam it to stop the oxidation. So you don't have that in, let's say, a Chinese green tea where they would like actually pan-fry it, but in Japanese tea, very specific to Japan, and then it would be processed to a crude tea, and this is called aracha. And from the aracha, then they will refine it into different teas to really enhance different taste profiles of the aromas. And so it's through that process, the final process, that there'll be the variation of teas. And again, there'll be, like, let's say, a sencha, which is a classic green tea, but you know, they're from different areas. It could be from the southern part, being the Kagoshima sencha, there's also the Shizuoka sencha, and they all have a different distinctive taste profile that's quite different from each other. I always like to share this Hachiju Hachiya. This is translated as 88 nights. So the first harvest takes place on the 88th day after the first day of spring. And that first pick, the first crop, is called Shincha, which literally means new tea. So it's like, comparatively, it's very much like the Beaujolais Nouveau when it arrives and the excitement. So in Japan, people really anxiously wait for the Shincha. It has a very lively, fresh taste, and I have to say there's usually a waiting list for the Shincha, but this is quite exciting because it's been dormant all season, so it really is rich in nutrients and really is just a special, special experience that I highly recommend when the Shincha is out. So again, Shincha meaning new tea, 88th day, and it's also really known because it's have the umami taste and it's very low in caffeine content and less astringent. So again, it's very lively, I think, on the palate. So characteristically, in terms of Japanese teas, again, then I will repeat again, which is the fact that they are unoxidized and steamed. The cultivation time of the harvest is really the determining factor of the different variations of the tea. And which is, I think, one of the reasons why in this country green tea became very popular, is because it's very high in antioxidants. I think a lot of people came into drinking the green teas because they had heard it was good for the health. It had the EGCG, it has the catechins, the vitamins, minerals. But I have to say today what's really exciting for us is it's not only just the health benefits today, people are really, really appreciating just the wonderful nuances and the tastes of each of the different teas offered. And again, the wide range of benefits, which really every day there's sort of new studies that come out that it really may help in terms of oral health and cardiovascular health, just an overall sense of well-being, and the fact that it gives mental clarity. And because green tea has L-theanine, an amino acid. So I often hear people who say, you know, I'm very caffeine sensitive. Well, yes, green tea does have caffeine, but it's about a third of what coffee would have. because it has a component called L-theanine, which is an amino acid, which gives you a sense of calm relaxation. So you have a sense of being alert and awake, but it gives you a sense of kind of calm and focus. And I always say it's probably why the Zen monks used to meditate and drink matcha, because it does give you a sense of kind of focus and clarity. So again, the brewing temperatures, and I can't stress enough, and I really recommend that you sort of experiment on your own. Sometimes I've had the same tea leaf brewed in different temperatures. So you can try that and experiment and see, because it really kind of extracts a different taste. And if you want, some people like a little bit more astringent, some people like a little bit lighter in taste. Japanese tea, and I used to get this quite a bit, and they say, it tastes very vegetal and sometimes even seaweed-like. And ironically, there's the umami taste, which is sort of the fifth sensory taste. And the umami is what actually is sort of a welcomed taste sensation for the Japanese people. And I'm seeing now, as more and more people are enjoying green tea, they're really enjoying the umami flavors of green tea. So you can see here, by rule of thumb, the higher grade tea, the lower the temperature. So the highest grade of a Japanese green tea is gyokuro. So you actually go on a lower temperature, which can go to like 140. And then for a tea like a hojicha and matcha, which is a little bit more of a casual, everyday sort of a tea, hojicha is a roasted green tea, you can go higher to about 200 degrees to even 212 degrees. And the senchas are a little bit in between. So you can go to like 175 to 185. So, keeping in mind, the higher the grade, the lower the temperature. And again, you can really, really sort of experiment what really you prefer. So I really, a lot of times say it's your preference. And I know a lot of people get very intimidated in thinking about these temperatures. So in Japan, they actually have a vessel called the yuzamashi, and that actually is translated as cooling vessel. So the yuzamashi is a nice sort of item to have, because you sort of put your hot water and let it cool down, and then you're able to infuse your tea. And we'll show that later when we do our demonstration.
Various regions of Japan gradually
We're
came to
talking about
produce
different
different
teas here.
varieties of green tea. Shizuoka Prefecture produces more tea than any other region. Shizuoka, Kagoshima, and Mie prefectures together account for 70% of Japan's total output. Tea is also produced in Kyoto and in Miyazaki Prefecture. Japanese green tea can be broadly divided into 5 categories: sencha, gyokuro, matcha, hojicha, and genmaicha. Sencha embodies a balance between tea's sweetness and astringency. Gyokuro is known for a mellow and rich sweetness. Matcha is stone ground after drying. This is the tea used in the cha no yu, or tea ceremony. Hojicha is roasted at high heat. It is savory and brisk. Genmaicha is made by adding roasted rice to tea leaves, giving it a fresh, savory flavor. Green tea is made from new leaves picked at the beginning of May, on the 88th day following the first day of spring. This is called ichiban-cha. Picking is done both by hand and by machine. After the tea leaves are picked, they are steamed. The timing of this process is extremely important. Steaming completely prevents the tea leaves from fermenting. Tea must be cooled immediately after steaming. This is to preserve the color of the leaves and the flavor. Next, the leaves are rolled. This results in uniformity of softness and water content. This operation also breaks the cell walls to release the components of the tea leaves. Finally, the tea is dried. Tea processed this way does not lose its flavor even when on the shelf for long periods. At this point in processing, the tea is at a stage we call aracha, crude tea in Japanese. Next, the aracha is blended with tea made using other processes. This helps maintain consistent quality and allows the blending of teas to suit consumer preferences in different regions.
So you can see that was an Ito-wen produced when we think, because Ito-wen, of course, we produce a lot of different teas, and we really take note. We're a vertically integrated company. We work very closely with the farmers. So we really try to work with the farmers in having different sort of teas to sort of take different tastes and flavors and aromas. So we can offer, because I think there's a lot of, just like wine, there's a lot of preferences in terms of what we prefer, and that is always the case also with green tea. So once the green tea is made into, whether it's a sencha or a gyokuro, there's the kyusu tea vessel. And I always have to say that I would often get comments, well, this teapot's too small. You know, I need a bigger teapot. But always have to explain that actually you do several infusions, usually about 3 infusions in a kyusu. So traditionally where you may have for black tea, you may have a large teapot, and you fill the teapot and pour it, and you would pour this in 1 cup, 2nd cup, 3rd cup. Well, with the kyusu, you actually have, again, 3 infusions, and you would sort of balance out, pouring out in each cup, so you have kind of a really balanced serving for everybody. And so there's a whole technique we will show later. But the kyusu is something that I have to say is traditional Japan and very important, again, in terms of the hot water, never boiling water. And also storing your tea is so important because, again, it's a very fragile tea leaf. So you should, if you're going to buy your tea, buy it based on your consumption. Don't have tea sitting around for months, sitting in your cupboard. So it's good to have a chazutsu, which is a tea canister, and very important to keep it airtight, moisture-free, and out of light. You know, you don't want it to be damp. You don't want it sort of, I know a lot of people put it in glass containers. You should always have it in a more opaque, away from the sunlight or any kind of light. So then we move into the matcha. Okay, the talked about matcha, what started out in the traditional chado tea ceremony, today actually enjoyed on all sorts of beverages and in recipes, and it's just lattes. I mean, it's incredible how matcha has just taken on a new life form. But I always love the saying that Masakazu Izumi, who was a grand tea master of Urasenke, and he had said, "It is a beautiful drink called matcha. This form of tea spawned a whole sphere of culture that provides refreshment to body and soul alike." And I do believe it is today in many, many ways. I know that people are really enjoying matcha. One, the health benefits, because you ingest the entire tea leaf. So whereas, let's say, in a sencha, you would infuse it and you would discard the tea leaf, matcha, actually, which is ground into fine powder, you consume the entire tea leaf. So you're getting that pure vitality of that tea leaf. So you're getting all the antioxidants, the vitamins, the minerals, and the fiber as well. So again, it's a ground tea. This might be a little bit repetitive, but it started with Japanese tea ceremony, brought in by the Japanese Zen Buddhist monks. And today is still practiced, but I have to say that there's a lot of more modern ways of doing tea ceremony. I think sitting Japanese style on the tatami sometimes could be a little painful, so they actually have a little bit more of a casual way of doing tea ceremony. tables and chairs, because I know I sat Japanese style and I could barely move afterwards. But and I like to think you can create your own tea ceremony at home. You know, it's funny, I'm seeing a lot of sort of movies these days and where they're kind of incorporating matcha, and there was a movie that had Adam Levine from the Maroon 5, and he was in a film with Keira Knightley, and she says, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm drinking matcha." He goes, "The samurais used to drink this before off to battle." And of course she tasted it and she sort of winced. But you're seeing today, I mean, I recently just read an article, and it was like Brad Pitt was drinking his matcha. So everybody's drinking matcha. So how is it made? Well, what's unique is it is made from tencha. So tencha is a tea leaf that has been shade grown. And imagine a leaf where the veins and the stems are removed. So you're getting the whole vitality of that tea leaf. And that has been dried and made into matcha. So the gyokuro, which you had seen earlier, that also is shade-grown tea leaf. The difference is that the tencha, it's deveined. You know, all that kind of fiber is taken out and made into a really, really fine silky powder. And traditionally, it is from the, Uji is very well known. Kyoto and Nishio are very famous for their matcha. And a traditional matcha stone grinder, usu, is sort of hand-cranked, and you can see it's actually quite laborious and takes quite a bit of time to even get a little bit of that powder, but it really is beautiful. I mean, we actually have one, which we would have loved to, but it was actually one of our other shows. So that is a traditional usu. But today, of course, they have a little bit more modern machines, but they still use the stone grinding. And what's interesting, I was talking to one of the technicians, he was sort of working the machines, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I'm adjusting. They have to actually change the stones, much like tires, when you have to rotate your tires." He said, "We have to rotate the stones too," which I thought was quite interesting. Now, I know when matcha first came here, and I particularly remember I was watching the news one morning, and I saw on the Today Show, and I don't know who saw this clip here. It was really quite interesting because they were talking about matcha, and then, of course, Al Roker had his little sip of matcha, and he kind of went. So actually, they came back later and actually kind of gave a new introduction to matcha because they thought maybe it's not showing in a good light. So today, of course, matcha has been enjoyed in all sorts of great drinks, whether it's a power smoothie and lemonades and lattes, and you really can be creative. I really feel today that matcha is something that needs to be in every pantry in United States. You know, I remember years back I was at an event, and it was Kikkoman's, the soy sauce company, that was celebrating, I can't remember, it was like their 70th anniversary or something. And the president said, "Can you imagine first coming to this country in the United States and we were selling black liquid and saying it was fermented soybeans?" And here, I mean, I think every home has a Kikkoman soy sauce. So I think everyone needs a matcha because you not only can enjoy it on its own, you can incorporate in great beverages, even alcoholic beverages, and also in cooking with it. And again, you know, the beauty in terms of overall Japanese green tea, which is why I think it has been getting so much attention, is, you know, the health benefits, as I mentioned. I mean, it's the EGCG, the vitamins. It's just sort of endless. And I guess, you know, the catechins, which really, I mean, it's just endless. I mean, for oral hygiene, it really helps maintain weight, the relaxation with the theanine, the vitamins. And I often hear, "Gosh, the Japanese always, you know, look so young." And I always say, it's the green tea. So, and it also, in terms of antioxidants, so you can see it's sort of off the Richter chart here, which I think why people are just putting it in their smoothies with their kales and so forth. But in terms of the ORAC compared to, let's say, a pomegranate, you can see broccoli, it's really, really worth having your matcha every day. So on to the wagashi. How are we with time? almost bitter. As I mentioned, Japan really, such an appreciation for nature, beauty, the seasons, and the wagashi, which Tomoko-san is really quite an expert at. So just to show you some of the beautiful wagashis, and uniquely that they are usually very sweet. They're dense because they're usually made with like anko, which is a red bean, and they are usually crafted beautifully, different seasons, and tend to be a little bit, there's the jelly-like wagashis, which are made with agar-agar, and always no dairy. And also they use rice flour. So just to give you, I'm going to run through this real quickly because I think we want to get on to some demonstrations here. But a sencha, again, it's quite grassy. This is sort of your classic green tea. And again, there's sencha from different parts of Japan. It's always good to when you purchase your tea, to really sort of examine the tea leaves to see if they are fresh. Really fine sencha is usually very needle-like because they roll them. And again, the umami and the astringency is actually, again, a very welcome flavor. But you need to kind of test and experiment and see what suits your palate. The Sakura drop is a beautiful, and you can see this is a translucent, the wagashi that actually Tomoko-san made. And I did have the pleasure of tasting it. She actually had a sakura flower in it, and she called it the Sakura drop, and she served it with mizu shingen mochi, with a kinako powder, and a kuromitsu, which is a brown sugar syrup, and it was absolutely exquisite. Hojicha is a roasted green tea. It's a little bit more robust, a little bit toasty. You can use higher temperature. And it's a little bit more with stems and leaves, so it's not as refined as, let's say, a sencha. And it's known to be lower in caffeine, so it's something to have after, let's say, an evening tea. And again, Tomoko-san had paired with the kinako cookie. And kinako is a roasted soybean, and it almost has a little bit of a peanut-type flavor, but it was absolutely delicious. So that was a kind of a nice pairing that we had. Again, matcha, this I consider a classic, and for those who are kind of new to green tea, this is a good introduction. It's two flavors, the roasted rice and the green tea. So it has a little bit of a popcorn taste, and it's a little bit textural and visual. And to be served with a nice kuri manju, which kuri means chestnut. Again, you can see that that's a red bean paste, so it's a very nice pairing. And gyokuro. This, again, is considered the finest of all Japanese teas. You enjoy it they actually have a tea set in smaller cups, and it's very known for its umami taste. It is shade grown about 20 days before harvesting, and so that really brings out the chlorophyll because, the shade, so it's looking for the sun. So it really is an exquisite experience, and it's not something everybody enjoys every day because, again, it's a really refined tea. And the yuzu mochi here was another wagashi that Yagi-san had made. She called it the snowball cookie, but it was coated with kinako, and again, and it has yuzu in it. I don't think, did this have kinako in it? No, I'm sorry. Forgive me, that's the wrong copy there. But it was more with yuzu, and it had the white flour and the white anko. Am I correct? Forgive me, I just caught that, so my apologies on that one. And then we have the matcha, again, the stone-ground, shade-grown tea leaves from Tencha, ceremonial, and the nerikiri, and this is something you will be experiencing, and I'll let them explain a little about it today. But the nerikiri is the bean paste, and I think with the white bean. They also have a red bean paste as well. So how does one do make matcha? You use a chasen, which is a bamboo whisk. You have your chawan, and we will show you that shortly. And today in Japan, ironically, I think matcha is probably bigger and hotter here in this country, but they are using 90% of the matcha today with a lot of culinary use. So you'll see the Kit Kats and the Pokies and the Japanese. So anything goes. And here in this country, you will see matcha in beauty. And it's wonderful. I know I use my matcha and I make a vinaigrette, and it's one of my favorite applications. But I'm going to end with 4 principles that are really very important in the world of Japanese tea. And it is wa, ke, se, jaku. And this really sort of embodies the world of the Japanese tea ceremony, as well as what I consider sort of the whole spirit of Japanese tea, as well as the beauty of the sakura. So, wa, ke, se, jaku. So on that note, I'm going to step over here. I'm going to invite Sakura from our Itoan, and her name is Sakura. And I want to say that she actually helped blend and created the Sakura Matsuri that we will be tasting later today. She is a tea taster from Itoan in Japan, and so Sakura, onegai shimasu. Okay, so Sakura, do you want to start? Okay, so we have our yuzamashi. Okay, again, this is the cooling vessel. I hope you can hear me all. And we highly recommend, if you don't have a yuzamashi, you can actually use a bowl, a mug. Just, it's a reminder that you can pour your hot water in there and let it cool down. Because again, temperature is crucial. And this yuzamashi happens to have a sakura motif in here. Hai, dozo. Then we have our kyusu. Thank you, Tomomi. Thank you. So again, very small, but you can infuse 3 times. And each infusion actually will taste slightly different. And we will watch Sakura pour this, but it's very, very important that at each steeping, you really empty the water, and she'll demonstrate that. Right, dozo. And then we have our tea canister, the chezutsu. So again, important to store it, and having a lid's a nice lid. And we actually brought today some of our tea accoutrements here that are all made out of the cherry tree bark. So this actually, there's inlaid designs of the sakura. And we have a beautiful container here. In Japan, a lot of times they'll put the teacups in there, the kyusu, and so all that, and they'll kind of bring it to the table and they'll start, preparing tea. So, dozo. Okay. So she has put hot water in the yuzamashi. And now she's going to be, with her tea scoop, putting about 2 teaspoons, tea scoops. Can you all see? Okay. Into the kyusu. So now that the temperature has lowered, and usually about, again, 175 to 185 based on your preference. So we also brought teacups. We really are going all the way out with the sakura today. So we brought some teacups that have the sakura motif, and actually we'll have that available for you if you're interested as well. But she'll let that sit for a bit, converse with her guests, and I think what's quite special is in Japan you necessarily do not have to have all matching teaware. I think a lot of times here, Western, we think, oh, you're matching plates, everything is a pattern. Whereas in Japan, they sort of welcome different. Your kyusu can be different, even in terms of your meals, the rice bowl. It doesn't all have to all match. Actually, having a little variation is actually a little bit more interesting. And I don't know if many of you know this, but the Japanese cuisine was recognized by the UNESCO Heritage. So it is a Japanese cuisine has been really been honored, I'd have to say, in that because of the heritage. So in with the Japanese food, of course, comes with the tea, which is sort of important. The beverage complementing the great food. Hi. So you can see she usually puts her thumb on top of the lid, and you'll see how she rocks it. And again, she's not filling the teacup one at a time, but really balancing it and rocking it. So it really is well balanced. Each of your guests will get the same infusion flavor, and this is very important. This is saigo no iteki. So you'll even see a little bit dramatic, and you do not want water still sitting in your teacup because it will affect the next steeping. And so important you do the saigo no iteki. Ne? So you can see the beautiful liquor, and you can see it's just so, in the sencha, I don't know if you can see that, but it really is an exquisite green, and all the different teas actually have a different color, which is sort of nice. Some you'll see a little bit more emerald, brighter, some a little bit more less, I'd have to say a little bit amber color as well. Hi. Yes, and this is, as I was mentioning with the gyokuro, because gyokuro, again, a really exquisite tea, and actually is quite expensive, so it's not something you can afford every day. So they actually have the gyokuro tea sets too, and you will enjoy it in a smaller teacup. And not necessarily a must, you can enjoy it traditionally, but they have specifically some gyokuro sets. And I have to say, again, it's that umami, that very vegetal taste, which is very much sort of welcomed. And again, as I say, from the time that I've sort of been in this world, I have seen such a greater appreciation that people really welcome that umami flavor. So we have decided that we wanted to also show that you can also cold brew. It's called mizudashi. We've been doing mizudashi for quite some time at Toan. And so you can do this in the summer, which I think is a great way. I steep my tea leaves, let it sit overnight in the refrigerator, and then you have a freshly brewed tea. So we have here, this is actually a brewing bottle, and we wanted to show you that in the summer, that green tea is not just about hot tea and doing the kyusu, but you can enjoy it, very refreshing. Sometime you may want to even put some experiment. You may want to put some fruit. You may want to do a little, a sangria, a little mint. You can be creative. In Japan in the old days, they probably wouldn't have recommended that, but we like doing that. And you can also mix it even with spirits. I know a lot of teas, you can mix, right, with a little bit of scotch, bourbon, cocktails. So we recommend just having fun with it. I think a lot of times I would get people say, oh, it's too intimidating. I just don't feel very comfortable doing that whole ritual. And that's why we have our oyocha. For those who want the on-the-go green tea at its optimal moment, it's nice to be able to have sort of a ready-to-drink green tea that you don't have to fuss with all the teapots and so forth. But I think it's actually something that really, really kind of celebrates time, taking a moment, sharing conversation with friends, and of course getting the health benefits of tea. So now we're going to show the matcha. And matcha, of course, again, was stone ground. It's a fine powder, but we like to recommend that it's better to also kind of sift if you can, much like you would do for powdered sugar when you're baking. So we have here, this is a furi, so it's like a little sifter in here, and you would kind of scrape that so the powder would be a much finer. So it really enhances when you do whisk your matcha, it really brings out the different layers of the matcha powder. This is a larger, not everybody has this. This is more kind of a special, but we thought we'd bring for show and tell. But this is an actual sifter as well, a larger scale. So we thought this was kind of fun to show. Hai, dozo. Yeah. Okay, so this is a chashaku, a bamboo tea scoop. And I highly recommend investing in, if you're going to make a real bowl of matcha, you must have a chasen. And I really have to say, this is actually a work of art. It is made out of one piece of bamboo, and you really could see the different threads. It's all hand done. They're actually saying that there's less and less artisans who can actually do this today. So this actually helps whisk the matcha. And of course, then we have our chashaku. Dozo. Yeah. So it'd be 2 scoops of your chashaku into your matcha bowl, chawan. And as I mentioned, there are different bowls. Yes, today we were deciding what bowl should we bring today. So she's pouring in the hot water. And she will use the chasen, which is the whisk. Can you see that? Yeah. So you can see, now the gentleman who was doing the koicha was doing a little bit more of a slower because of the koicha. This is how traditionally for the usucha, and you'll see her vigorously whisking it, usually sort of in an S shape. And what you want to do is create a nice sort of a froth on top, which should be uniform, like the bubbles should be very uniformed. And it really is sort of a whisk, sort of the wrist, I'd have to say. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see, but really important to whisk it so you get that nice froth on top. It's really very grassy. It's very bright. I know a lot of people, when they first try it, there's a little bit of a shock because it's so green, but it is so delicious. And generally in Japan, when they do serve matcha, they will give you actually a higashi or a small sweet before actually drinking your matcha. And when you receive your matcha, generally, so your host prepares the matcha, which you saw, and when they receive it, they turn the chawan, because there's usually sort of a front of a tea bowl. And so to be polite and honor, and you admire the tea bowl usually, you turn it and then you sip your matcha, a couple gulps, right? And it really is, I'd have to say, it's like a cup of nature, and it really is sort of invigorating. It's very bright green, and I think, which is why everybody is, I think, really getting into matcha today. So we also have here, so we have the kama, and that you saw, generally that would be boiling the water, and the shaku, so be scooping that into your bowl. Sorry, I'm just having a mind blank here. And then this is an iron kettle. And again, we really went overboard with Sakura, but this is a traditional Japanese kettle. So you can see that this is traditional, but we don't want to sort of, you can kind of experiment on your own. If you want to serve your cold brew green tea in a champagne flute, why not? We were actually going to bring some wine glasses too, because we thought, how wonderful to have a fresh green tea in a wine glass. So I think that it's nice because it really is an expansive world and very complex, different in terms of wine, because wine, there are the different varietals of the vines. It's either the Pinot or the Chardonnay, but in green tea, once again, it's one Camellia sinensis, but it's usually where it's cultivated, how it's harvested, processed, that really gives a differentiation. So we really invite you to explore, experiment, and with matcha, again, as I said, it can be enjoyed as a beverage, it can be enjoyed in a recipe, whether it's a savory or sweet. I know a lot of chefs bake with it. So we really recommend you bringing your own tea experience. I often invite friends over and they get all excited because I make green tea ice cream at the table. And it's very simple. It's just, a little vanilla ice cream with the matcha, and as you're talking and you're blending, and then you can add some, whether it's fruit or mint or whatever. But they think that's pretty exciting. So we we have an array of different teas. We invite you. I know just for this special event, again, as I said, we had the Sakura Matsuri, but we do have a whole full of teas on our website. And if you put Sakura, there'll be a 15% special promotion that we're offering you for a couple months. So I just wanted to share that with you. Hopefully you were kind of excited to learn about tea. So on that note, how many times? I wanted to introduce Tomoko Yagi-san because she has worked laboriously today. She has created about 270 beautiful, exquisite wagashi today. So I'd like to invite her to the stage. So, Tomoko-san. And with Tomoko-san, so
Thank you for Rona-san.
Yeah, とんでもない. And this is Sakura, her daughter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sugi. Yeah. So she is also Sakura. So as I said, we really went overboard with the Sakura today.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
No. But really, because she just came back from Japan several days ago.
3 days
And she
ago.
came and said, I'm cranking out. So each one is hand done, and you will see the beautiful artistry that she has done, paired with our teas. So we hope you'll enjoy that, and I'll give the floor to Tomoko-san.
今日皆様にサーブするお菓子は練り切りという日本の伝統的なお菓子です。
So I'm her daughter, but also the default translator. So I'm happy to be standing next to her. But she was talking about how what we're serving today and what she made with the Chan staff is a wagashi called nerikiri, and it's a very traditional wagashi.
和菓子、ごめん。練り切りは白あんをベースにした四季を表したお菓子です。
Nerikiri's base is a white bean paste made from
lima beans.
Not red bean, but lima beans, and that's why it has its white color. And as like all wagashi, it expresses seasonality and celebrates, in this case, Sakura season, cherry blossom season.
この後皆様に美味しい当園のお茶と桜を表現した練り切りを楽しんでください。
She hopes that you'll enjoy the nerikiri that she made. I mean, today it was just like a table full of beautiful nerikiri flowers, and it kind of looked like a cherry blossom kind of festival, just laid out like that. So hopefully you'll enjoy with both your eyes and your taste buds. And if you have more questions about wagashi, or if you'd like to try to make wagashi, we do have classes at Cha'an. So please come talk to us or visit us at chaanteahouse.com.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.